You heard Sean reference a comment by President Biden. He is hitting the campaign trail. Did he go to Arizona or Pennsylvania? Did he go to Michigan? Did he go to Wisconsin? One of those critical blue wall states? He went, checks notes, to New Hampshire and a campaign office by himself, and still managed to screw up the news cycle by saying the following.
This is a guy who also wants to replace every civil servant, every single one. Thinks he has a right under the Supreme Court ruling on immunity to be able, if need be, if it was the case, to actually physically eliminate, shoot, kill someone who he believes to be a threat to him. I mean, so what? I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We got to lock him up.
What?
Politically lock him up. Lock him out. That's what we have to do.
He said, lock him up. And then he tried to change it to, politically, as if lock him up politically is a thing.
Megyn, I'm a little bit disappointed in you that you can't recognize a brilliant Biden imitates Dana Carvey imitating Biden. It was fantastic. It was fantastic. Hopefully this Saturday we'll have Dana Carvey imitating Carvey imitating Biden. When Kamala Harris a few weeks ago did an event in New Hampshire, I said to everybody in both parties, like, what's going on? Because she's spending a day campaigning in New Hampshire. They said, oh, no, she's got a fundraiser in Boston. She's given a national speech. It's got nothing to do with being worried about New Hampshire. And in fact, the private data in New Hampshire shows her with a pretty substantial lead. Joe Biden back in New Hampshire yesterday. And so there's a school of thought. I'm not predicting Trump will win a landslide. I'm not rooting for Trump winning a landslide. But there's a school of thought that says Trump's going to go to Albuquerque to try to win New Mexico. He's going to go to St. Paul to try to win Minnesota. He's going to go to, Richmond to try to win Virginia. And then he's going to go to New Hampshire. And I was told yesterday, someone showed me an email saying that the Trump campaign is doing last minute hiring, paying a pretty robust sum for folks to do door knocking at the last minute. So watch that dynamic. Let's see. It could be a mistake, but again, Joe Biden went there. Now, in terms of what he said, I don't think the four of us need to review the reality of Joe Biden's cognitive decline for the last 10 years. But it's amazing that he's out there doing these events. Did it ruin her chance of being president? No, but it's not great for the news cycle. And of course, it undermines one of the strongest high horses that Democrats have and feel they have, and the media feels they have, which is that they're not using loose rhetoric the way Republicans are. He tried to take it back, but it's not a great thing to say, both in terms of the photo op and the moment, but also as a sitting president, he just shouldn't be saying stuff like that. And I'd say that about a president of either party.
And he is at this moment trying to lock up Trump. I mean, he is actually trying to lock up Trump at this moment. There are two federal prosecutions. One is on appeal, having been dismissed by the judge in Florida, and one is still awaiting a trial date. So it's not a good look. And interestingly, Kamala Harris has avoided mentioning the lawfare for the most part on this latter half of her campaign. I think she realized that's only helped Trump, that the American people do not like it. They don't want you to hear you tout it. And apparently Biden did not get the memo. But Mark, you mentioned Biden's mental acuity. That was one question that Hallie Jackson asked Kamala Harris about, which I appreciated and pressed her a bit on. And here's how that went. Listen to Top 5.
Can you say that you were honest with the American people about what you saw in those moments with President Biden as you were with him again and again, repeatedly in that time?
Of course. Joe Biden is an extremely accomplished, experienced, and capable in every way that anyone would want if they're president.
And you never saw anything like what happened at the debate night behind closed doors with him?
It was a bad debate. People have bad debates. He is absolutely.
But that's the reason why you're here, and he's not running for the top of the ticket.
Well, you'd have to ask him if that's the only reason why.
What do you think?
I am running for president of the United States. Joe Biden is not.
It's a judgment question. That's why I ask. can the American people trust you in these moments, even when it's maybe uncomfortable for Americans to level with Americans in that way? So that's why I ask. And it sounds like what you're saying is you feel like you never saw anything like that from President Biden.
I have worked with Joe Biden, hours and hours and hours over these 4 years, whether it be in the Situation Room or the Oval Office. Joe Biden is the one who was able to bring NATO together during a crisis where, for the first time in 70 years, Europe saw and has seen war. I speak with not only sincerity, but with a real firsthand account of watching him do this work. I have no reluctance in saying that. No, of course I don't.
Okay, Mark. So you're the one who is all over the Biden is getting forced out story. And you, first of all, can I just tell you, I have no doubts. He's extremely capable. Whenever the voice goes up, we know it's a tell. That's nerves. Take it from me, Phil Houston, spy the lie. He's the human lie detector, CIA, 25 years. Is not how someone responds when they're like, I got this. I'm fine with this question. Extremely capable. And then when you also doubling down, have to say, I speak with sincerity. This is another line you should not use when trying to be perceived as a truth teller, Mark.
I've said before, the cover-up between the people in the administration and the press is the biggest media scandal, I think, in modern American history. And it continues to be ignored. Now, people are covering the presidential campaign, but there was no accountability of the cover-up. There was no recognition. And I don't know exactly what her role in it was. I suspect she was not central to the execution of the cover-up. But I find it humorous and sad when people say, what did you see behind the scenes? She didn't need behind the scenes. She just needed to watch C-SPAN. And therefore the question isn't what did you see behind the scenes, although there may be more to that. It may be Joe Biden didn't step aside because Nancy Pelosi said your poll numbers are bad. He stepped aside because they told him you're not capable of coming back because of your loss of acuity. So I think that is it the biggest issue in this race, or should it be? I don't think so. But for a lot of Americans, I think it's a question for her and for everyone who served in the administration. How did you sit back and think this was okay? And of course, if she loses, as I said, there's 100 reasons Democrats are going to give for why she lost if she loses. One of them would be, and will be at the top of the list for a lot of Democrats, Joe Biden should have never run. There should have been a proper, competitive Democratic nomination fight. And the belief amongst most people in the White House, including, I believe, the president, was Kamala Harris would not have emerged victorious from that nomination fight. And so I think, again, the question is, you were left trying to run a 90-day campaign for the White House. Didn't you think the country and the Democratic Party should have moved earlier? Now, I'll say one last thing. She's admirably loyal. I think loyalty is a great thing. And she is vice president because Joe Biden chose her. And he has treated her in part because of his memory of how he was treated as vice president, exceedingly well.
Yes.
So while some Democrats are critical of her, particularly on this issue of not breaking with him, I do understand why she doesn't want to break. In part, it's because breaking opens up other questions, but in part, it's because of loyalty. And so I give her not a pass, but I understand why she would be reluctant to be the one out there saying, oh my God, the guy's totally lost it. I can't believe he's still president.
Hey, Megyn,
there's a way of leaking that. Go ahead, Sean.
I want to pick up on a point that Mark made a moment ago about some of these, New Hampshire, et cetera. So I go through every Wednesday on my podcast, the road to 270, what's changed from the week before, et cetera. The last couple of weeks, I sort of said Nevada's the seventh state that I don't think that Trump's going to have the hardest time winning the battleground states. That I think we talked about earlier in terms of early vote. I believe that's solidly in Trump's camp now. I think that the interesting thing that's going unreported right now is the shift in the dynamic, right? Coming out of the convention, when she kicked Biden out and she went in, there was this vibes and joy, and she was riding a sugar high, and people were talking about how competitive it was and could Trump stay competitive, et cetera, et cetera. We've shifted from that to not only the battleground states, but I talk about this tonight in the podcast, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Virginia, New Mexico, and I think to some extent potentially Nebraska too, are all now back in play in a way that we wouldn't have talked about 4 weeks ago. Just trust me on this. I think that there is a scenario in which Trump could actually get to 350 electoral votes. I don't think that it's possible right. I'm just telling you, look at the data. Look at what's happening in each one of these states. It went from outside the margin of error. Each one of them is trending in Trump's direction. Does he get all four? I don't think so. But I think that they've gone from assuming that the blue wall, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin were going to be the toughest to now saying, what else could we pick up? But I believe at the very least, we pick up one of those four other states that I mentioned.
He's going to go to Albuquerque. He's going to go
there, and he'll go to Minnesota. He wants Minnesota in play so bad.
That, I mean, unlike the best case projections on the map, when you like make it most favorable to Trump, Minnesota remains blue. So, I mean, that would be truly a power move. Dan, what do you make of Sean's analysis?
Well, look, I don't know if Trump is actually going to, end up winning those states. I think what's hard as a Democrat is you would hope that there would be some states that you would be talking about for you where maybe Trump is on having to play a little bit of defense, a little bit of rear guard, and it's just not the case. And, go to 2020, even 2016 up until Comey, at this point, the Clinton campaign was talking about maybe Arizona and some other states. Joe Biden was beginning to talk about Georgia being like real, we may win it. It's just at this point, you're playing defense everywhere.
This show encourages honest conversations, which isn't easy in today's media environment with big tech deciding who and what gets amplified. Well, there's a news platform that prioritizes free speech and transparency without controlling the narrative. Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that aggregates related articles from around the world, highlighting each source's political bias and corporate influence. Here's an example. Recently, CBS News told their staff not to refer to Jerusalem as being in Israel. And guess who didn't cover this? Left-leaning media. On Ground News, you can see more than 90% of the coverage is coming from right-leaning sources. Ground News has an entire blind spot feed with stories like this that are receiving lopsided coverage. It reveals how media narratives are shaping the conversation, and they're offering our viewers 40% off their Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to their website and app. They are independent and supported by subscribers, not corporate interests. Check them out at groundnews.com/Megyn. That's ground, GROUND, news.com/Megyn to take back control of the news you consume. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.